Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at the Swampfox Sharpshooter reticle, and I've got a bunch of targets out there at unknown distances, and we're going to be, I've been working with this reticle for about 2 weeks now, and I'm going to, give you guys my thoughts on what's good about it, some things that could be made better. So let's see, we got this guy over here, right? And I'm going to use the top part of the vertical stadia line. And I see, well, if you look at that area between 6 and 9 mils, you can see how it's got those fine details. I kind of look at that as a marker because that gives me a really quick reference, even in low light conditions, of what 6 mils is. And anything that's in, any human that's inside of 6 mils, he's basically inside of 300 yards. So basically, I can just put the crosshairs in the chest, start banging away. And if I, I'm aiming at the top chest. If he's, let's say, a little bit further away, the bullets are just going to drop a little bit lower into his body, okay? Now, one of the things I mentioned in earlier videos about the way this crosshair is set up, the way they come together, it can sometimes it can be really hard to find where the center of the crosshairs are, if if it's up against a dark target, okay? And any combatants, right? Because this is a combat reticle, right? It's a mil-scope. Mil-scopes were basically used by the military. This is a combat reticle. So one of the things I have found is that most of the time the things you're going to be shooting at are going to be dark, and it can be kind of hard to find, where those lines meet. Okay, so that's one of the first criticisms I have. Okay, so let's go further back. Over there, I have a car. All right, so real quick. Now, here's the thing: the front of a car is usually about 6 feet wide. So that's the same as a man. That's about 6 feet tall. So the same deal here. I'm using that 6 mil marking. All right. So as soon as any car that's charging at me, that's inside of, that's basically 6 mils or smaller, they're going to be inside of 300 yards, right? And they're going to close that distance really fast. Assuming that there's some type of suicide bomber. Basically, I'm going to get the reticle right on where the driver's windshield is and just start blasting. Bang, 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 bang. Okay? Okay. So that's how I would deal with that. Now, let's see. Back here, I have another vehicle that's also heading our way. That one looks like it's a truck of some sort. So here's the thing. Most trucks are 8 feet wide. For the purposes of, let's say, dealing with a truck that's racing at you, I'm going to go by the same measurements, okay? Anything that's 6 mils or closer, and I'll explain why in a minute, is going to be inside of 300 yards. I would start off at the windshield. Now, this thing is a little further away. Let's just do a quick reference. He's like at about 3 mils. Okay, so 3 mils, I got to reference my cheat notes. Okay, so 3 mils would put him at about 700 yards, okay? So here's the thing. I'm using the red dot to get back on spot. I got a red dot offset to my non-dominant eye so I can quickly get on target, and I'm working at about 12 magnification right now. That's 24. Now, the thing is, you got to do a parallax adjustment. With these types of scopes, anytime you're moving, you got to do a parallax adjustment. But I'm going to work at 12, okay? Because here's the thing. He's going to close distance really quickly. So the fact that he's starting off at 700 yards, okay, I mean, he's going to be at 500 yards in no time, okay? So what I'm going to do with this guy is I'm going to start the same deal. I'm going to start with the, because by the time I figure out that he's at 3 mils, 700 yards, he's already at 600 yards, okay? I'm going to put the crosshairs at the top of the windshield and start banging, okay? Now, what's going to happen is, if he were a car, right, I would want him to be inside of 500 yards, okay? But with the truck, because it's taller, I'm okay at starting at 600 mils. I'm sorry, at 600 yards, okay? because I'm going to start up here at the top of the windshield, start banging away. The bullets at that distance are going to probably drop near his front bumper, okay, really low. But as he closes distance, right, and comes closer and closer to me, the impacts are going to start to rise. So as he closes in, by the time, let's say, he gets to 500 yards, my impacts are going to be on his radiator, okay? And by the time he gets to, let's say, 300 yards, which is going to be pretty quickly, the impacts are going to be, let's say, top of the hood, possibly going, through his dashboard, okay? And as he gets closer, and when he gets to the point that I can actually see the face of the driver, then I'm just going to transition over to the driver's side and start banging away, okay? So what I'm doing here is I'm using a technique that's going to take into account the fact that he's driving towards me really fast, right? We're talking like, Mad Max Road Warrior Apocalypse now, where you got trucks like basically trying to run you down, okay? So as soon as he's within anytime he's like at 6 mils, like this car here, I'm going straight to the driver. But even if he's like at 500 yards, right? 500 with a truck, let's say out to 700 yards, I am still going to want to start at the top of the windshield, in which case the bullets are going to drop into the radiator area, and they're going to walk up towards the driver area as he gets closer, okay? So that's how I would deal with a car that's or a truck that's charging in real fast. Now, the reason why this works is like with a car, it's lower, right? So basically what I'm really interested in is in 4 mils, because at 4 mils, a car that's like 6 foot wide, that's going to be at 500 yards, okay? But a truck, because it's a little bit wider, a bigger target, I'm okay with it starting off at 600 yards, okay? So that's why I'm using the same measurement for either one. All right, let's back off a little bit. Actually, let's back out a little bit. Let's go to a different target here. All right, let's see. I got a guy over there. Let's smell this guy out here. Okay, so let's zoom in. So we got this guy. We can do a little observation. This guy is out in the open. He doesn't know that we're there. We can do a parallax adjustment. Zoom all the way up. Try to identify him. Okay, so clearly, so we can see that's Captain America right there. Okay. All right. So he's 3 mils. Okay, he's at 3 mils. So I got to reference my notes. 3 mils puts him at 700 yards. Okay. The holdover for 700 yards is 7 mils. Okay. So now here's the thing. If I go to the down here, I have to actually zoom back to find 7 mils, which would be right about there. But the thing is, let's say the other thing I could do is I could dial up 7 mils on the turns. Okay, so I'm going to dial up 7 mils. So now this is the Swampfox Patriot 6 to 24. Okay, so one full rotation is 6 mils, so I need to go to 7. So I'm actually going all the way around to the 1. Okay, so now I've dialed up the 7 mils. Hold on, get back to the target. Okay, so yeah, I'm using, like I said, I'm using a red dot to get me on target without having to dial back. So now, since I've dialed up, I can put the crosshairs on his chest and take my shots. Okay, now, one of the issues I have found with this scope, if you look at these, because let's say we miss, right? Let's say we miss. Okay, if we miss, we're trying to see what a splash would be. Okay, so let's say the splash, we notice that the splash is 1 mil down and 1 mil to the right. Okay, then we would just transition that dot to the target. Okay, but here's the thing: if you look at the dots, let's go to the 2 mil line, because there's just a lot more dots there. Okay, they give us what the big dark dots are 1 mil, and then the other ones in between, I think I guess are like 0.2 mils. Okay, so here's the problem with this design: they give us like these really fine measurements. Okay, but the reason why it kind of doesn't make sense is because, let's say the splash is a 0.5 mil down and like a 0.2 to a 0.4 to the right. right? You don't have those dots on the 1/2 mil line. Okay, so you have like these really fine measurements at 1 mil, but you don't have them at the 1/2 mil line. Now, I'm okay with like here's the thing: if this scope only had like 1 mil measurements on, let's say, the 1 mil line, the 2 mil line, and 3, that would be fine because that kind of like all works together. What I'm saying here is like there's no point in giving us all these dots that to me kind of look like a straight line, right? Especially if the scope's moving around a little bit, if you're looking into it for a long time. You've got so many dots on each of those lines that it's just not useful because you don't have that fine detail on the 1/2 mil line. So to me, it makes sense to either just put 1 mil dots, on the 1, 2, 3, and or maybe put like a 1 mil dot and a 1/2 mil dot, but you don't need those extra 3 dots in between. Let's say 1 mil and 2 mils on, let's say, the 2 mil line. It's just not usable because if there's an impact that happens, like, if your splash is 1.5 mil down, right, and you're trying to, you've got nothing to, you've got no point of reference there. So, because a lot of people say, oh, the scope is too busy. It's one of those things like, it depends on what you're going to use it for. And it has to be consistent, okay? If it's going to have like those fine measurements on 1 mil, 2 mil, 3 mils, then I think it also needs to have it on the 1/2 mil lines, right? On the 1.1.5 and the 2.5 and the 3.5. Okay. Now, if it's like on a DMR scope, I don't think it's necessary. Okay. It would be necessary, let's say, on a long distance, like dedicated sniping type of scope, right? But on a DMR scope where you're looking to do like really quick adjustments, I don't think like the 0.02 dots are very useful there. I think that we would be fine with just like 1 mil dots and maybe a half, or maybe just the 1 mil dots and a 1/2 mil dots. Now, as far as measuring, like, yeah, out here, like if I needed to measure this guy, like exactly how many mils across the chest he is, like, yeah, you know what? It's useful to come out here where it's like way out of my way. I got these fine measurements here. I'm going to do a parallax adjustments and I can try to take a fine measurement. But here's the thing. We said this guy's at about 700 yards. It is really hard to, like, especially against a dark target, to get that fine of a measurement. That's just the reality of it, I would just quickly say that this guy here, like, zoom up. Was my one. I would do a quick measurement and say this guy is 1 mil wide. Okay, so 1 mil wide. I referenced my notes. Okay, so basically 1 mil wide would be about 500 yards. So measuring him lengthwise is always going to be a little bit more accurate. So lengthwise, we said he's at about 700 yards, and that's for that distance over there. That's more accurate. That's more correct compared, because I've been doing this for a while now, so I know that at that distance where I have him, for the size that he is proportionately, he would be at 700 yards. Okay, so I'm giving you guys a bunch of information to think about. And now, one of the things you got to remember with this scope doesn't have a zero stop, and that's one of the things that's kind of sucks about this this Patriot version. You got to remember to dial back down to your zero. Okay, a zero stop would have been very useful. I'm okay with it not having illumination, because what I find is that most of the time in daylight, I don't use the illumination because it tends to overwhelm the targets, even at like low light conditions, right? If you're looking at a target at that distance, right, what I have found on scopes that have illumination, once I illuminate it, again, especially against a dark target, I can't see the target very well. So I'm better off just working with the etched reticle, even in scopes that have illumination. So that's why I don't mind that this Patriot scope doesn't have illumination. I do wish it had the zero stop. Now, the reason why I bought this scope is because I was looking for something, because scope and mount, this thing is under 2 pounds. It's like 1 pound, 14 ounces. So I was looking to put something on a DMR rifle. Okay, so one of the things I'm finding is that, like, because there's a 30 millimeter tube, the eye box is just, if you're a little bit off, it's really bad. So and I have another scope that's 34 millimeters. 34 millimeters is just so much better. And I'm just trying to decide if what I'm giving up in weight saving is worth the inconvenience of going down to the 30 millimeter tube and having that worse eye box. And so far, my opinion, that the way I've been forming this, my opinion has been forming, no, you're better off sticking with the 34 millimeter tube or just going to an LPVO, because a lot of times I'm working with like 12 magnification, which is right there. Okay, so this is what, here's 24. And we said that these guys, he's at about 700, he's at about 750. That's what you guys are going to look like. Yeah, that's the level of detail that you can see there at about 750 yards. All right, so in 24 magnification, you can see the buttons on Thor's armor. You can see his helmet. You can see his cape at 700 yards. Do a parallax adjustment. You can see Captain America there. You can see his star on his chest. You can see the red and white stripes. Okay, so that's what a man would look like at 700 yards with 24 magnification. So let's go down to like 12. So that's the level of detail. So you can kind of see the star. You can see the stripes. You can see the buttons on Thor's chest. I mean, yeah, the 24 is probably a little bit better. I think 15, let's go to like what would be like 16, right? So that's what 16 looks like. So this is what I think. Right now we're at 16. Let's dial back just a little bit. That would be like 15. This is what we need, in my opinion, is really an LPVO that goes from a 1 power to 15, a 1 to 15 LPVO for a DMR gun. Or if they can't give us that, let's say a 1.5 to 15 would work really well. Now I know March, there's a scope company called March. They've got a 1.5 to 15. It's like $3,000. It's not practical for most people, even for like a combat type of situation. I don't think it's practical, because to me it's like all guns are in a combat situation are disposable. They're gonna get lost. They're gonna get broken. They're gonna get left behind, abandoned. You know, sometimes you just gotta, So it doesn't make sense to go into a combat situation with really expensive guns. Okay, you're better off with having lots of cheaper guns. So that's why, like, I like Palmetto guns, and I like, like primary arm scopes, like the SLX series. I like the Swampfox, right? Again, $500 scopes. That's where I want to be. Okay, even though I've got like a $1,500 scope, I mean, I think that's, I'd rather. I think most people would be better off with having like three guns with $500 scopes versus like one gun the gun costs like $2,000 and the scope costs like $1,500. You're better off with more guns and more scopes, because now you got decoy guns, you got guns that can get left behind, abandoned, traded, all that stuff. So those are my thoughts on that. Okay, so let's actually come back real quick. Zoom back. Let's see, I got one guy over here. All right, so this guy here we can see like from the waist up. So what we do with this guy? He's sitting down. So from the waist up, he's about 2.5 mils. Yeah, he's also diagonal. So I would say he's about 2.5 mils. So if you double that, that's 5 mils. And 5 mils is about 400 yards. Okay, so that would be so for 500 yards, the dial up is 3 mils. Okay, so right now my turret is zeroed. It's at my zero. But for 400 yards, 3 mil dial up, I would just drop it down right there, bang bang bang. I wouldn't mess. I don't like messing with the turrets, especially on a scope that doesn't have like a zero stop, unless I need to, right? Anytime you're messing with the turrets, you're increasing the chance that, you're not going to dial back. It's just going to be in the wrong position the next time you go to shoot. So if at all possible, you want to just use the reticle, which is going to work out to about 500 yards, which is that distance. Once you start, because there it's like, I take my shots. If I'm off and let's say I splash down if I see the impact at the 4 mil line below him, I just transition that up. Okay. So I've got enough mill lines underneath that I can spot a splash and then transition it up. So at 500 yards, that's what a man would look like. And again, what I said earlier, I think there's like way too many dots. Let me zoom up a little bit. There's just way too many dots on that Christmas tree reticle. Okay, I love Christmas tree reticles. In fact, that was my criteria for buying this scope. I was looking for, in fact, I was considering getting like a 3 to 15, like a 3 to 15 or something along those lines. But what I found is that to go like going up to like a 24 power magnification, right, and staying as long as you're staying within the 30 millimeter tubes, I was only like the extra weight was only like 1 ounce, so that's why I ended up going with like a 6 to 24 instead of going to like a 3 to like 14 or something like that. But what I'm finding is that I love it. So my criteria is I needed a light scope where it was like 1.5 pounds. I'm sorry, it was less than 2 pounds to go on a DMR gun, and it had to have a Christmas tree reticle, which this scope does have. But the Christmas tree reticle here is like, there's just too many dots. And if you're looking this for a long time, those dots start to look like a straight line. So I think what we needed was just 1 mil dot and maybe a 0.5 mil dot, and that's it. I think that would have worked a lot better for this scope. So, then my thoughts on that. Let me know what you guys think. Drop some comments below, and we'll talk soon.